Welcome back to MJL 3764 Collecting Elvis on Vinyl. This is part 27. Today I thought we'd take a look at some of the regular 70s albums. By the term regular I mean I'm not going to include any live albums like On Stage or MSG. I'm not going to include any compilation albums like Hits of the 70s, Pure Gold. They'll be seen in a later video. And obviously the Camden albums like Separate Ways, etc., they've already been seen on a previous video. So these are just the regular 70s albums. It's 13 here, from 1970 to 1977. So let's take a look at one. I think we'll go for Elvis now, as this one seems to garner a lot of criticism as a leftovers album. So let's take a closer look at that. Elvis Now was released in 1972, and apparently when Elvis went into the recording studio to make this album in March 1971, it was going to originally be a folk type album, but unfortunately after one day's recording Elvis was ill with his glaucoma and the sessions were halted, and by the time they went back into the recording studio about 2 months later, the onus was on making the Christmas album, The Wonderful World of Christmas, and the gospel album He Touched Me. So this album sort of got forgotten really, and they had to beef up the album with some older tracks. So let's take a look. Front cover's around August 71, picture of Elvis, nice cover. Back cover, pretty plain with a couple of ads. So I said before, this album's called A Bunch of Leftovers, but as I've mentioned to some fans over the years, we have an overdose of information about the Elvis Sessions with the Elvis Sessions books, which I'm not knocking. I totally love them books, but if we didn't know what we know, maybe we'd look at this album a little bit better. Looking at the tracks, you could say this was all done in one session if you didn't know any different, apart from Hey Jude. Obviously that's a 1969 track and his voice does sound different, but apart from that, if we put aside what we know, this could be regarded as just a regular studio album. The title is a bit misleading though, Elvis Now, when some of the tracks on here are 3 years old. I think that's stretching it a bit far, but there you go. So this is the UK orange original pressing. This copy's got a glossy front cover and a glossy back cover, which is nice. Some of them are got the glossy front but a matte back. I don't know if you can see the difference there. And that's the original orange 72 pressing. Here's a Brazilian pressing. This one's interesting. Slightly darker front cover. Back cover's different. Doesn't feature any ads. And if you take a look at the track listing, you'll see that side 2 has a different running order. Instead of starting out with We Can Make the Morning, it starts off with Sylvia. Instead of having Early Morning Rain next, it has We Can Make the Morning. And then instead of having Sylvia, it has Early Morning Rain. So the first 3 tracks are mixed up, and then it reverts back to the same running order. It's on a nice label. And again you can see the difference in the running time of side 2. Okay, next copy is a newer German black copy. Again, nice laminated cover. And this one again has got different ads on the back. So you've still got the worldwide album, but you've got a newer compilation rocker instead of the 2 worldwide albums on the original cover. This also has the barcode, and it's on the new German black label. That came out about 83. There was another copy with a matte cover. This came out in around 1980. And this is on the newer black RCA label. Got some CDs and the FTDs, but we'll go through them when we get onto the CDs of these albums. Hopefully once we finish with the vinyl, I'll go through the CDs. And this album got to number 12 in the UK charts, so quite respectable. And as I say, unfortunately it did get sandwiched in between the Wonderful World of Christmas album and the gospel album He Touched Me. So a lot of fans say this album has no thread to it, but personally, Elvis being a versatile singer, if you can get away with putting gospel songs on an album like Miracle of the Rosary, Put Your Hand in the Hand, current hits like Help Me Make It Through the Night and Until It's Time for You to Go, big ballads like We Can Make the Morning, Sylvia, folk type songs like Early Morning Rain, the Ricky Nelson hit Fools Rush In, and a jam session all on one album. I don't see anything wrong with that at all, really. We have thread albums which are good, but I don't believe every album has to have a thread. I don't think that's really a criticism of this album. My own personal view. Now, this album did have a single issued from it, so let's take a quick look at that. The single from Elvis Now was Until It's Time for You to Go, backed with We Can Make the Morning, which reached number 5 in the UK charts in 1972, so quite a respectable chart placing. This is the solid version. It was issued in solid and 4-prong. That's the B-side, that's my jukebox copy. And it did also come in a colour sleeve. Unfortunately, this picture was used, I think this was the 6th time they used it, 6th and last time they used this picture. It's a nice picture, but again, overused. That's the 4-prong. And that is a real near mint copy, that. Happy to have that one. And that's the back of the sleeve. Okay, let's take a look at another 70s album. I thought we'd take a look at the next album released. This album actually came out just a couple of months after Elvis Now. This was Elvis's 3rd and final gospel album, called He Touched Me. This was released in 1972. It's number 38 in the UK album charts. Now by this time, the early 70s, there was less presses of the records. In the 60s, there was 60s albums, 50s albums, there was maybe sometimes 7, 8, 9 presses. By this time there was only probably in the UK a couple of presses of albums like this, Today, Full, etc. So there wasn't as many variants available now. So this is the first one. This is the original 1972 press. It's on the orange, nice gloss orange label. This one's in excellent condition. Hardly any spindle wear, if at all. Both sides. Back cover looks like that. We've had for the 2 previous gospel albums. Of course there was You'll Never Walk Alone as well, issued in 71, but that was a compilation album. So they're the 3 gospel albums. Bit of trivia. What do the 3 Elvis gospel albums all have in common, apart from having all gospel music on them? And the answer is, they all begin with H. His hand in mine, how great thou art, he touched me. Useless trivia. Next copy is an 82-83 New German black copy. Back cover, very similar, just got a barcode. And it's on the New German black label. This album was quite hard for me to get hold of in the 80s, so I had to wait for it to be repressed. And it's one of the last Elvis albums I bought to complete my collection up until that point. This one, the full album, and the very last album I ever bought to complete my collection up until that point was Girl Happy. I remember buying them 3 last. And this is an American pressing. If he touched me on the Dynaflex. And this one has the inner sleeve. And the back of the sleeve looks like that. Now in the UK there wasn't a single release from this album, but in the US there was, so let's take a look at that. This is the single. This actually is a German pressing, it's not a US pressing. These are quite hard to come by in the UK. Any record which was issued in the US which wasn't issued in the UK, quite hard to come by. This is probably maybe the second rarest, the first one being O Come O Ye Faithful, with a picture cover, then this one, He Touched Me, and then maybe Pieces of My Life, Bringing It Back, and then probably Life, Only Believe. They're quite sought after in the UK. So picture cover, same both sides. And the record on the orange. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up for this video. So until the next time, remember, while there's music, life's no waste.